Have you ever wondered what's really going on inside the head of someone who speaks more than one language? Well, today we're going to dive deep into the bilingual brain. We're talking its power, its flexibility, and how it plays out in the real world. And to see it all in action, we're going to use the Philippines, a country with over 180 languages, as our main case study. It's going to be fascinating. So here's the plan. We'll kick things off with the actual science. What's this bilingual advantage all about? Then we'll get into the incredible linguistic story of the Philippines. From there, we'll look at the rise of Taglish, see how all this works in the classroom, and then wrap up by exploring the huge edge these skills give people on the global stage. All right, first up, the bilingual advantage. Let's really unpack the cognitive perks that come from having to juggle more than one language all the time. You can seriously think of it like a constant 24/7 workout for your brain. I mean, it's a pretty bold question, isn't it? We hear all the time that being bilingual is great, that it has all these benefits, but how deep does it really go? Does it actually fundamentally change the way our brains work? And the answer is a huge yes. Neuroscientific research is showing us that the experience of being bilingual literally reshapes the brain's structure. It actually strengthens neural pathways and boosts key functions, giving you a real, measurable cognitive advantage. So how do scientists actually measure this brain boost? Well, one of the key tools is this cognitive test that looks at something called the Simon effect. Basically, it tests how good you are at ignoring distracting information to focus on what really matters. And it turns out bilinguals are absolute rock stars at this. And the data? Well, it pretty much speaks for itself. Just look at these reaction times from a study. When they were faced with confusing, conflicting info, the younger bilinguals were more than twice as fast as the monolinguals. And get this. The older bilinguals performed almost as well as the young monolinguals. That's incredible. It shows how being bilingual can help protect your brain's processing power as you get older. And look, this isn't just some abstract thing happening in a lab. These brain advantages translate into very real-world skills. Study after study shows that bilingual people tend to do better in school, particularly in subjects like math and reading. They also show stronger memory and way more creative problem-solving skills throughout their entire lives. Okay, so let's take all this science and see what it looks like in the real world. Let's head to our case study, the Philippines. Because here, being bilingual isn't just a personal skill. It's woven into the very fabric of the nation, all thanks to a really complex history. You see, the way people talk in the Philippines today was forged over centuries of colonial history. Spanish rule left a big mark, of course, but it was really the American period that cemented English in schools and government. Then, after colonialism, there was a push to build a national identity, which led to Filipino, based on Tagalog, becoming the national language. So what you end up with is this really fascinating linguistic split. English became the language of power, of formal education, of getting ahead in the world. But Filipino, that became the language of the heart, of home, of national pride. This whole situation set the stage for something totally new to emerge. And all of that history leads us right here to the modern-day result, this super dynamic and often misunderstood phenomenon that we call Taglish. Now, before we get into examples, let's be super clear on what this is. Taglish is a form of what linguists call code switching. This is not about people forgetting words or making mistakes. It's an incredibly sophisticated, rule-based way of talking that bilingual people use all over the planet. And I mean, it is everywhere in the Philippines. One study of TV clips found that even on public media, the foundation of conversation is overwhelmingly Tagalog, but English is just constantly and seamlessly woven in. Tagalog is the base, and English words and phrases just flow right into it. Here's a perfect example of what that sounds like in practice. So intrigued ako, researched ko. You hear that? The English root word, research, gets perfectly blended with a Tagalog grammatical piece in to make a brand new verb that everyone instantly understands. It's just efficient, it's natural, it gets the point across perfectly. So this isn't some kind of broken language, it's linguistic evolution in real time. For millions of Filipinos, Taglish is pretty much the default common language. It's a powerful tool they use for everything from telling a joke, to adding emphasis, to signaling their background, and building a connection with people. Okay, so this brings up a huge question, right? If this is how people actually communicate in the real world, what are you supposed to do in the classroom? Do you try to reflect that reality, or do you enforce a strict one-language-only rule? For decades, this has been a massive debate in Philippine education. For a long time, the official policy said subjects like math and science had to be taught only in English. But in reality, on the ground, many teachers were using a code-switching approach, using both languages to help their students really get a handle on tough concepts. So, which way works better? Well, a landmark study on teaching math gave us a really, really clear answer. The students in the code-switching group didn't just do a little better, they crushed it. They scored significantly higher than the English-only group. They just plain learned more, and they learned it better. And a quote from that study really just hits the nail on the head. Think about it. If a student is struggling just to understand the language being used to teach, how can they even begin to understand the actual subject? Letting them use their first language as a bridge is just a powerful, common-sense teaching tool. All right, for our last section, let's zoom all the way out and see how this national culture of bilingualism gives Filipinos a serious advantage out there on the global stage. This deep cultural bilingualism has basically given Filipino professionals this amazing toolkit. They've got a high level of English, sure, but they also have this built-in cultural flexibility that comes from always navigating different languages. It makes them incredible communicators, which is a massive asset in international business, especially in the huge global BPO industry. So, in the end, being proficient in English in the Philippines isn't just another skill you learn in school. It's a real key to global opportunity. It connects the entire country and its people to the international economy in a really profound way. You know, the story of the Philippines gives us a pretty powerful answer to that question. It shows us that embracing multiple languages doesn't just build a better brain. It builds bridges. Bridges between different cultures, bridges to economic opportunity, and really bridges to a more connected and understanding world. So it makes you think, what new bridges could another language build for you?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really getting into the complex reality of Filipino-English bilingualism. You know, the Philippines is often recognized as one of Asia's largest English-speaking countries, but what does that actually mean for people on a day-to-day level? For the students, the professionals navigating this dual identity, we've gathered sources from sociolinguistics, cognitive neuroscience, education to really explore that.
And our mission for you, the listener, is to move beyond that statistic and understand the profound balancing act that's required here. For a Filipino student, English proficiency isn't just another school subject. It's widely seen as the passport to, global participation, better jobs, professional success. But balancing that powerful ambition with preserving your native language, whether it's Tagalog or another one, creates this fascinating tension. And what we're finding is that this isn't just a cultural challenge. It actually unlocks some surprising cognitive and cultural advantages.
It's such a remarkable situation, culturally. English is so deeply integrated, a holdover from American colonial history, and being good at it is often a source of pride. But, as our sources point out, the way it's acquired often contrasts so sharply with a student's native language and cultural background. So let's start there. Let's unpack that tension by looking at how language is actually used socially.
Right. The foundational tension is, I think, very clear. It's social mobility versus heritage. The record shows that students almost overwhelmingly view English proficiency as this valuable, very practical skill. They get that it gives them access to global markets, to international communication, but that same drive often creates an anxiety about losing touch with their linguistic roots.
But the sources also suggest it's more dynamic than just a simple trade-off, right? It's not necessarily a loss. It's more of an expansion. I mean, students in these studies said that learning English really broadened their perspective. It let them interact with people from other countries, made them more conscious of different cultural viewpoints. And researchers actually have a name for this. They call it an extended cultural identity. You're not replacing who you are. You're just adding layers.
Exactly. You gain a wider lens to see the world through, which is just inherently valuable. And the main vehicle for managing all this flexibility is, well, it's code switching. Or as it's popularly known, Taglish, the strategic back and forth between English and native languages depending on the social context.
We hear code switching all over the world, but what do the sources tell us about the specific roles of English versus, say, Tagalog in the Philippines?
They show a very distinct pattern. It's very structured, and it reflects these deep societal associations. Tagalog is the language of intimacy. It's tied to domesticity, community, informality, group solidarity. It's used for personalization. It's meant to close the distance between the speaker and the listener.
And English, I'm guessing, takes on the opposite role.
It does. English is the language of formality, professional competence, authority, even wealth and knowledge. It functions as the language of objectivization. You use it when you want to deliver general, credible, or technical information.
Wait a minute. If English is automatically associated with wealth and authority, doesn't that create a kind of internal linguistic class structure? It sounds like choosing a language isn't just about communication, it's about signaling your status.
That is a critical observation, and it's drawn directly from the sociolinguistic analysis. The choice is far from neutral. If a speaker wants to boost their credibility in, say, a formal setting, they'll naturally lean towards English, even if the topic could be discussed just as well in Tagalog.
And switching back to Tagalog with it.
It becomes a powerful signal of trust, of solidarity. Sometimes it's used to soften the formality of an English message.
So code switching isn't lazy or messy. It's actually highly efficient and strategic.
Absolutely. The research even highlights something called message qualification, where speakers mix grammar very precisely to differentiate meaning. They might make a main point one language and then add a modifier or a technical detail in the other to fine-tune it. It's a really advanced level of communication, maximizing clarity and social acceptance at the same time.
And this is where it gets really fascinating for me. That constant linguistic juggling, managing two systems, two sets of social rules. It seems like it's not just a social strategy. It fundamentally changes the brain's operating system.
That's right. And now we're shifting to the cognitive architecture. If a child is exposed to both languages from infancy, what we call simultaneous bilingualism, they're constantly working to coordinate two linguistic systems. They have to make sure the right one is on for the right context. And this lifelong training enhances what are known as executive functions.
Okay, for listeners who might not be familiar with that term, what exactly are executive functions?
Think of them as the brain's chief operating system. It's the core system that manages all your other mental tasks. It includes things like cognitive flexibility, switching between tasks, or ideas inhibition, which is your ability to ignore distractions, and attention control.
So it's like their brain is running two demanding apps at the same time.
Yeah.
And that training just makes the whole system run better.
Precisely. And the key finding from the sources is that these benefits go way beyond language itself. For instance, studies found bilingual children actually outperformed monolinguals in complex nonverbal tasks like spatial perspective taking.
So it translates into real-world problem solving.
Yes, higher-level problem solving. It enhances general academic readiness. They're just better at mentally rotating objects or seeing something from another person's physical point of view.
That ability to manage conflict and shift perspective, that seems to be the core skill here. And that links directly to something the sources call metalinguistic awareness. Can you break that down for us?
Metalinguistic awareness is essentially the ability to treat language as an object of thought, not just a tool you use. It's like stepping back and reflecting on the structure of language, the rules, the sounds, instead of just being immersed in the message.
So thinking about how we say something, not just what we're saying.
Exactly. It's that moment you realize the word dog has no real connection to the furry animal. It's just an arbitrary label we all agreed on. And studies comparing proficiency levels found that full bilinguals, so those highly proficient in both languages, had clear advantages over partial bilinguals.
And where do they excel specifically?
They had a much better understanding of language arbitrariness, like we just said, but also in phonological awareness, the ability to detect and manipulate sounds in words. And that skill is a huge building block for literacy. If you can break words down into their sounds more easily, it helps you learn to read. The research argues balanced bilingualism provides a stronger foundation for literacy.
Now let's look at the lifelong impact. It's so important to know that this cognitive boost isn't just for kids in school.
Not at all. Sustained bilingualism is widely recognized for its positive influence on the brain in older adulthood. Some of the most compelling evidence comes from neurological studies, from experiments like the Simon task, which measures the brain's ability to handle conflicting information.
What did they find when they looked at older adults?
They found that older adult bilinguals performed better on these really demanding cognitive control tasks than their monolingual peers. But here's the most striking part. While they were performing better, the bilinguals' brains showed decreased activation in key frontal regions.
Wait, so they're solving the problem better and faster, but their brain is actually using less energy to do it. How do you interpret that?
It's the ultimate sign of efficiency. It means the cognitive system is highly optimized. Researchers suggest that a lifetime of managing two languages offsets the typical age-related declines in neural efficiency. It's like their brain is running a super complex program using less CPU power. This suggests bilingualism builds a substantial cognitive reserve, helping the brain withstand the effects of aging.
Okay, before we move on, we do have to address the common caveat here, the vocabulary trade-off.
Right, that's a necessary balance point. It is true, a bilingual person might have a smaller vocabulary in any one of their languages compared to a monolingual. However, when you measure their combined lexicon, the total number of words they know across both languages, it's generally comparable, or sometimes even greater. They might know fewer words in English, but they know a whole other set of words in Filipino.
Okay, so the classroom is where all of these cognitive and social dynamics really crash together. And the Philippines has been wrestling with how to handle this for decades, leading to all these major policy shifts.
And those shifts really reflect that constant tension between national identity, linguistic diversity, and, preparing students for a globalized world. You had the vernacular education program in '57, which prioritized local languages. Then came the bilingual education program in 1974, which formalized using both English and Tagalog.
And the current policy is?
That's the mother tongue-based multilingual education, or MTB-MLE. The philosophy is really powerful. Teach kids for the first few years in their mother tongue to build a solid foundation. But a major concern in the sources is the abrupt transition from that into English instruction in the later grades. It can create these serious learning gaps if it's not managed well.
And this feeds directly into performance issues, especially in technical fields. The Philippines has consistently ranked pretty low in international math assessments. The sources point to historical issues, like relying on U.S.-anchored reforms that maybe emphasized English vocabulary over pure conceptual understanding.
Which creates this battleground over what language to use in the classroom, particularly in STEM. Engineering students, for example, have a really strong aspirational preference. Survey data shows over 70% prefer English instruction, and over 75% believe that a teacher who is good at English makes it easier to learn because they link English to global engineering standards.
So they want to be taught in English because they see it as the language of professional success.
Exactly. It's that symbolic weight of English we talked about earlier, but
Okay.
you have to contrast this with the performance data. Other studies show that student performance in difficult engineering and math courses was actually better when they were taught in Filipino,
Wow.
which suggests that while English is the aspirational choice, their native language helps them grasp the concepts more quickly and more deeply.
That is a huge conflict. If students understand better in their mother tongue, but they feel they should be learning in English to be global professionals,
Yeah.
how do you manage that in a real classroom?
The sources suggest flexibility is the key. Teachers who use strategic code switching seem to manage this tension most effectively. When teachers do that, students participate more, they're better at explaining complex topics because they're in their linguistic comfort zone. It's a scaffold. And on top of that, digital literacy, IT tools. Those are being identified as crucial for helping students build their English fluency on their own.
Let's circle back now to the learner themselves. We started with this idea of managing two identities. They're balancing these core Filipino cultural values, respect, collectivism, ambition, with career goals that are just so tied to English.
And that constant negotiation produces this incredibly powerful social skill, empathy. Switching between languages means you are constantly assessing context, speaker intent, cultural nuance, and that skill fosters cross-cultural communication, cultural sensitivity, diplomacy. Bilinguals are just more adept at reading multiple cultural maps at once.
But the journey isn't always easy for young learners, especially when language gets tangled up with social acceptance. That Mindoro State University study had some really heartbreaking personal stories.
It really did. The challenges went beyond just lexical confusion, not being sure if a word is English or Filipino. There were clear examples of social isolation, like a child whose peers, and this is do not talk to him because they think he can't understand Tagalog, or just the profound shyness a child feels because they think their language skills aren't good enough. That's a deep social pain rooted in language. It shows how important it is to support both sides of their identity.
Which really underscores the importance of having a structured approach at home. And the research gives some clear models. For listeners who want to ensure their kids have high proficiency in both languages and prevent that heritage language loss, what are the recommended parenting strategies?
They're very practical models. The first one is the classic one parent, one language, or OPO. Each parent consistently speaks only one language to the child. So dad speaks Tagalog, mom speaks English, for example. The second is minority language at home, ML at H. This is often cited as the most effective for protecting the heritage language. Both parents speak Filipino at home, and the child learns English from school and the community.
And the third one?
That one is time and place, or TNP. This is where you designate specific times or locations for language use, Filipino Saturdays. Or maybe you only speak Tagalog in the kitchen but English during homework time. All these strategies give both languages structure and value in the child's mind. So to summarize, this deep dive shows that Filipino-English bilingualism is so much more than just having two vocabularies. It's a dynamic system that grants real, measurable cognitive efficiency, letting the brain do complex things with less effort, and at the same time, immense social flexibility and cultural sensitivity.
And that central paradox for the learner is always there. In the Philippines, being good at English opens doors to global opportunities. It carries a symbolic weight of professionalism, of authority, of success. But at the same time, that deep connection to the Filipino language carries the essential weight of intimacy, of solidarity, and cultural identity. And since English proficiency is sometimes correlated with affluence and authority, and Tagalog with intimacy and community, we have to recognize that the choice of language, or the decision to code switch, it's never just a functional decision, it's a social signal. Which leaves us with a provocative thought for you to take away. Given these power dynamics we talked about, what assumptions or social judgments do you automatically make based on a person's chosen language or their use of code switching in your own daily interactions? Something to mull over as you navigate your own complex linguistic world.